Today is December the 10th, as Ayo did remind us, but what he didn't add is that today is International Human Rights Day. And on this International Human Rights Day, we are also celebrating with Enough is Enough, a civil society organization whose work we've followed for many years, especially here on Sunrise Daily. 15 years of their own existence, and their Executive Director Yemi Adamolekun joins us now for a conversation. It's so good to see you this morning. I had thought that you'd be wearing something a little different, but so characteristically you, wearing your T-shirt. I know that T-shirt has Office of the Citizen because I also have it as well. It has been quite a journey, you know, trying to get Nigerians, especially young Nigerians, to be aware of their rights, to be able to make use of their voice. So I want to ask you, how would you say that there is a difference between now and 15 years ago when your organization started?
Certainly. Good morning again, and thanks for having me. Yes, certainly. I think there's a lot more awareness. I think what social media in and of itself has done in democratizing information, both creators and access. We talk about in 2010 when Enough is Enough started. That was it was 2011 elections that you then had government officials start opening social media accounts. And they were then taken aback because unlike TV, as you and I are talking, no matter what we say, whoever disagrees with us, we can't hear them. Radio, unless it's a call-in program, whatever they say, you can't comment. For social media, you get response instantly. And government officials were very taken aback. And that's where the phrase children of anger, very rude. So I think in terms of over the last 15 years, a lot more awareness, a lot more ownership. You can create, there are people who make money now creating memes about who is sleeping at the National Assembly, what governor is working or not working, as the case may be. So that level of awareness has increased, certainly. But I think that hasn't translated in terms of action. So we complain a lot and we find humor to deal with things that we don't like. But the gap between identifying what you don't like and wanting to do something about it, it hasn't shrinked as much as I would have liked.
That this awareness will translate into action. As a matter of fact, my next question to you was going to say, in what ways would you say that that awareness has moved the needle? Well, it would seem that you've preempted that to, you know, to say that it would seem that we tend to want to catch crews, as they would say, if it's something that we see that we can't do much about. But we have seen quite a number of campaigns come up on social media, move from online to real life, so to speak.
Yeah.
The question there will be, what real difference has that made for citizens?
I think, to your point, it's there. I think maybe my own is context in terms of volume. I would have expected that the action would be proportional in this. Maybe not directly proportional, but at least more aligned with the awareness and the interest. But I think there's some fundamental things that make that difficult, that even for me, I'm getting sort of more clarity as the years go by. So number one, I would say, is even just education. There's nothing really in Nigeria's structured education. So yes, we teach civics, but it's a very basic type level civics. We talk about history being removed, not really teaching it in our curriculum. But there's nothing really in Nigeria's curriculum that teaches citizens that they have power, that they have agency, that they have voice. So for a lot of Nigerians, democracy equals elections. But the very heart of democracy is the fact that you have voice to be involved in governance. You have voice to hold your elected officials accountable. And that part of it is what we haven't done well. And as EIE Nigeria, as you said, that's the whole idea of the Office of the Citizen, that you have power. But if you think about it, I'm a Yoruba girl. Having a conversation with an older Yoruba man who might have misappropriated money can get, you journalists can get away with it perhaps. But as citizens, it gets a bit tricky because you are then called rude or whatever word they want to use. And then religion is also another thing that Nigerians hide under a lot. We expect God to magically solve all our problems. And it's in our language. God day, it is well. God is in control. So those types of things sort of subconsciously disempower. And it's in understanding that and trying to overcome that we have to consistently teach and then tell the stories of success. if you pick up any paper or watch most news programs, it's usually the senator that's sleeping, the senator that has stolen money, the governor that is not doing anything. It's more the negative that gets amplified. And we don't do as much with, as you rightly said, there's citizens who have gone offline. I mean, we have success stories from our radio program where people get information, then engage their senator. Just recently in Nasarawa, in total local government, an IDP camp got a borehole because they engaged the local government chairman, and they got a result. But those types of stories, both media and organizations like ours need to tell more so citizens can connect the dots that these things do happen. And then lastly, I would say also government. Anybody that's pushing government to do better is usually taken as an enemy. So the fear is also real for some people. Popular phrase, I beg, I cannot come and die for Nigeria. Because government makes it look as if the fact that you want the country to work better is you must be gagged. So you have people, I mean, there's a young man who is in jail in Anambra now. He's been granted bail since May of last year, but he's still being held because of what he uncovered around sale of body parts in Anambra. And so we're now trying to put pressure and highlight his case so the boy can go home for Christmas. He's been granted bail by a court. So citizens are saying that even if I'm doing the right thing, even if the court finds for me, a governor can decide that I am not going to go out. And it's at all levels, local government, state, federal. And so that's real as well. And then recently we had NSAS, obviously. And the trauma of that is very real for a lot of young people who literally watched their government open fire and shoot citizens. So you have to do the work to let citizens know that it's abnormal, or you can't let that then define how you engage government, because it's not right. So you can't then shy away, because you then leave space for impunity at a very high level.
Well, before I let my colleague Ayo come into the conversation, because I know that he most likely will close it from there, I'm going to ask you this one personal question, as I know that it's been quite a journey for you. 15 years of your life has gone into this. It had meant that you have had to put aside everything else. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on TV, but I'm going to take a risk. You turned 5 decades at the start of this year. So I'm trying to imagine a decade and a half of your life dedicated to building this and creating awareness for Nigeria. It's almost like as if you lived a sacrificial life, more or less, you know, saying, I'm not going to pursue wealth. This is my life's calling, and this is all that I'm going to do. When you think about it, has it been worth it? Or do you think that, you know, you could have had another type of life like everyone else?
I certainly could have had another type of life. Certainly could have lived somewhere else, could have worked somewhere, could have a whole lot more money, could have traveled a lot more, and I love to travel. But it has indeed been a privilege. EIE in 15 years, or 14 years that it's been a formal organization. And it's indeed, I would say it's been a privilege for me to have been a part of their lives, especially the feedback that I get on what's been in working at EIE and working with me and what they've learned and how it has impacted their lives. And also seeing EIE's footprints. I mean, we have a book called Footprints, Past, Present, Future. And what we've done, as I've reflected over 15 years, it's, I won't call it a waste at all.
Well, congratulations as I hand you over to my colleague, Ayo.
Thank you.
I hope you can hear me.
Now I can, clearly.
Okay, good. So the one narrative that's been on, that was something that you said earlier about, you know, education and all of that, is how do we get the people involved? It's interesting, madam, that the people who are denying other humans their rights are humans. And one way or the other, they themselves get denied their rights. So how do we bridge, you know, each other's rights? Because it seems that that narrative is lost. Once I'm in a particular, you know, sphere of influence, I am in charge of your human rights. The soldier, a policeman, even a civilian, having a measure of authority, tend to say, okay, I'm going to use this to full advantage. So how do we change that narrative so your job can be easier and maybe you can travel more?
It's really, honestly, I believe education. At the heart of it, we must help people connect the dots. Connect the dots between between governance, politics, and the quality of life. Now, you're quite right. When you're in a position of power, there's this subconscious thing that it won't happen to me, that I'm above that. And then there's also what it does in terms of what you try to acquire to then shield yourself when you leave public office, and why people don't want to leave public office. So you have Ouattara in Ivory Coast, who changed the constitution till he's there for 4 terms. And then what's interesting is notice how not all, but West African presidents go there to celebrate his 4th term. What you're subconsciously saying is that it's acceptable behavior. That if I also in my country can change my constitution to stay on ad infinitum, I would do that. So we must then not only educate citizens, but in educating them, communicate to those who are in office that there are consequences for this. Rotimi Amechi famously said that when he was governor, that maybe when people start throwing stones at us, then we will behave differently. Because he says that when they show up at places, everybody claps. So in our actions, we're reinforcing their bad behavior or saying it's acceptable behavior. So at the heart of it really is just education. But it's the key to your point, I would say, is how do we educate? How do we make the information sticky? How do we make it accessible to people so they can really connect the dots? And that includes language. A lot of things are done in English, the major languages. So how do we take it down so it's in language that people understand? In context, maybe in proverbs or in historical narratives that helps them understand ultimately that you have power and all these people are public servants for a reason.
Just one last question. Is there a place for culture in this conversation? You talked about the place of the English language and all of that. But rather than, struggle to translate, the campaign, of human rights into local languages, are there existing cultural practices or activities that can enhance or amplify human rights? In your culture, for instance, the head of the community, the traditional ruler, is called someone that cannot be questioned. Now, in a way, that is like, shush your human rights. So how do we communicate, this through existing cultural practices and activities?
And it's a brilliant question. To my first question, when I answered her around how, as a Yoruba girl, asking question of an older Yoruba gentleman that might have misappropriated money will be considered rude. That is the cultural part. And then adding that to what you are saying, even language. So when you're saying translation, so government is Ijoba, a king's seat in a sense. And then if you now say that a king cannot be questioned, within that context, democracy doesn't quite apply. So you have to use what is known. You go from what is known to what is unknown. Meet people where they are, and then use what is there to explain where you are trying to take them and how it's different from what they know. And so you're absolutely right. It has to be, because you have to get people to understand what it is that the journey that you're taking them. I mean, as they say that even monarchs, there are processes to depose a monarch. So it's not to say a monarch is there forever. If communities decide that this monarch is
that happened recently. I think that happened recently in the southwestern state. They practically walked the traditional ruler out of town. Well, maybe as you have
point,
also
you
reminded
us.
Absolutely.
To make the point, but not, you can't ignore it. You go from what people understand, get them to where you want them to go.
Well, I'm hoping that we'll be able to percolate this all across our various communities, because there are some people who believe that that is one of the things that happen in certain quarters, particularly, which also in a sense fosters insecurity, because once people believe that they don't have a right, then they are docile. But once they know their right, they stand up for it. We congratulate you. 15 years of EIE, not a joke. Thank you for all of your sacrifices. And thank you very much for what you do for humanity. Yemi Adaramalekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay.